going to talk about writing strategies that work. If you haven't been here before, welcome, and I'm glad you're attending this workshop, and hopefully it'll be helpful for you with your homeschooler. So my name is Jennifer, and I've been a homeschooling coach in a public school, charter school setting in California since 2012. So I've literally worked with hundreds of students and parents. A lot of my students I've had for multiple years. So I have one 9th grade boy that I've had since kindergarten, because in California, if you sign up for these public charter schools, you typically stick with your teacher as long as you're with the charters. So some of these families I've had for, 9 years, maybe even 10 years. So I have a lot of experience with homeschoolers and working directly with homeschool moms and some dads. And then I'm also a certified dyslexia interventionist. So I got certified through the Orton-Gillingham Academy. And in my after work hours, I tutor one-on-one dyslexic kids that some of them are homeschooled, but most are in public and private school. Okay, so you don't have to share, but at least think about what writing are you doing with your homeschooler? And if you're comfortable putting it in the chat, go ahead. Maybe you're not doing any writing and that's why you're here. Or do you have something you're already using for writing? I would love to hear that. So this is what we're going to cover. Why writing is important, like why is it even something we should include? Why writing is hard, because a lot of these kids, dyslexic kids, dysgraphic kids, find writing extremely challenging. We're going to talk about stepping stones so that you can ease your way into more successful writing. We're going to talk about scaffolds or supports to offer your child so that it's not such a difficult thing. We're going to look at a couple of writing programs if you're looking for something you can purchase or use that'll make it easier. And then we'll do questions and answers at the end. Okay, so why is writing important? So writing allows a person, me as an adult or you or your child, it allows us to put ideas on paper and put our thoughts on paper. And, when writing isn't a struggle, we kind of take it for granted. But when it is a struggle, just like you just shared about your child wanting to kind of edit what they would say because it's too hard to say what they're thinking, that makes it a less enjoyable activity. And then they're really not getting to put their ideas and thoughts on paper the way they would like to if it wasn't such a task. So this is a quote by Diana Hanbury King, and she's one of the Orton-Gillingham she did a lot of work, especially with adult people who had never learned how to read, who learned to read as adults, dyslexics who weren't taught as children. And she does a lot with writing, or she did a lot with writing. And she says writing fluency, so that means like being able to write just easily. The uninterrupted transfer of ideas is important, especially in the elementary grades, and improves with practice. And what I like about this is it's not just something we need our high schoolers to do because they're writing research papers. It's really something we want our younger kids to be able to do. And it does improve with practice. And it might not be quick. You may not see quick improvement, but you will see improvement if you attend to it. So writing helps us communicate with others. Writing is expected in many areas of life. Like if you're in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, there are a lot of things you might have to do that require written responses or written information. We can do a lot of our communicating through voice to voice, but there are some situations that require things to be put on paper. And then written expression supports developing spelling and reading skills. So if you feel like, oh gosh, this writing thing is just another thing I need to add to my homeschooling day, just remember that it's actually supporting the work that you're doing in spelling and reading. So whatever you're teaching your child in spelling and reading and all of the hard work you're doing in those areas, the writing will actually help that grow. It's almost like writing, spelling, and reading. It's like you're watering plants, and when you water one plant, you water the others by default. And so just keep that in mind, especially on the difficult days that you're actually affecting a lot of change in different areas of literacy. Writing also greatly benefits learning in other subject areas. So sometimes we think of writing as just an isolated thing, but depending on what we write about, we can actually increase our students' knowledge about science, about history, And even about math, we can incorporate writing tasks or writing activities into math learning. And so then you're not only improving your child's writing skills, but you're actually deepening their knowledge about something that they're learning. So let's say your child is writing or reading in science about dinosaurs. If you add an easy writing task to the learning about dinosaurs, now they actually understand the science that you've been teaching them. They understand it at a deeper level. And so you've made the subject matter even more meaningful, and you've increased their writing skills at the same time. So it's kind of like killing more than one bird with one stone. So let's move on to why is writing hard? So you may think, oh my goodness, we're going to do all these great writing things. And then you put it in front of your child and it's a disaster and your child is upset. And in the homeschool environment, you're the one that, takes all of that in as the parent. And so the reason writing is hard is because it's overly taxing because of the multiple tasks occurring simultaneously. It's the most complicated of the literacy activities that we ask kids to do. So what mental processes are used for writing? So this is why it's so difficult. We need kids to have ideas, to generate ideas, because we don't really want to give them what they need to write. We want them to come up with their own ideas and their own responses to questions. They have to plan how to write, like where are they going to start? What are they going to include? Which is similar to organization. They have to think, okay, am I writing a sentence or am I writing a paragraph? Where is that going to start? Where is it going to end? Which details am I going to put in between the topic sentence and the conclusion? That's all part of the organization. Then they have to think about the spelling, which is another layer of difficulty, especially for dyslexic kids. And then the handwriting on top of it, or the typing. And if either the handwriting or the typing are a struggle, then they now feel like they're being overly burdened because we're not really just writing, we're doing all of these other things. And if any of these things are hard, the whole process seems difficult. And then at the end, they're confronted with the challenge of revising. So looking at their work again and deciding if it makes sense. Are there misspelled words? Did they include capital letters and periods? And all of that can just seem like too much. And it actually can be too much. So I think about it like a stove that has too many pots on it. And if you think about like this stove is just cluttered and there's a lot going on. We have ideas, we have handwriting, we have organization, we have planning and spelling. And there's no way to manage all of these things at the same time really well. Like if a child's working memory, if their focus is on the spelling because they think that you want them to spell everything correctly, then all of their attention goes to the spelling and their ideas start to fall apart. Like the organization gets lost, the focus gets lost. If their attention is too much on handwriting because they want it to be neat so other people can read it, then their spelling starts to fall apart. So it's very difficult for kids to manage all of these things at once. Just like when we're trying to multitask as adults, it's difficult to do anything well. Like the last weekend, I was on the phone with my mom, and I didn't put my computer down when she was talking to me, and I knew that I was not listening to her as closely as I could have because I had my computer in front of me, and so I was distracted. So I was trying to multitask and I wasn't really doing the phone conversation very well. And I actually wasn't doing anything productive on the computer at the same time. And so it's like that with our students. If they have this cluttered stove of things going on, something or many things will start to fall apart and they will feel overwhelmed. One of the things that we need to work towards is automaticity, which means something being really easy and automatic. So the lack of automaticity in handwriting, typing, or spelling can hijack working memory, making the act of writing nearly impossible. So if you have a child who's handwriting, they have to really think about every stroke of the letter. Like they have to think, okay, where do I start for an H? Oh, I start at the top and I go down and then I do the little hump. If they have to think about that, all of their working memory is now going to the letter formation And the writing, like if they're trying to write about dinosaurs, that's lost because there's no automaticity in their handwriting. So that's why it's really important to get the handwriting, the spelling, and the typing as easy as possible for your child. So then their working memory's freed up for the ideas and the communication that we're trying to get them to do through the writing task. And we're going to talk about how we can help while our kids are not automatic in spelling, typing, and handwriting. What can we do? Because we still want to work on writing in the meantime. Diana Hanbury King again says it is important that the initial writing assignments be designed to build the writer's confidence. For many students, writing is a threatening activity to be avoided at all costs. And you may have experienced that with your child. I had the student I was mentioning at the beginning, when I said one day we were going to do some writing, immediately I saw his body kind of like his posture changed. He got in kind of a defensive posture and he's like, I'm not doing that. And I hadn't really even said too much about the writing. I hadn't even shown him the paper yet. And so for him, it was threatening. And so in the moment, I had to quickly shift gears to make it a less threatening activity, because I don't know what happened during his years of school before I started tutoring him, but obviously something is causing him to react like that. And so I need to make writing not threatening, not overwhelming, so that we can start to make progress. And we have in the last couple of months, which has been great. Okay, so let's talk about some stepping stones, so ways you can make writing more accessible to your child. Writing instruction needs to start at the most basic level. So one of the things I do with my students is we start with the sentence level, because all of my Orton Gillingham tutoring students have trouble just writing basic sentences. So that's where we start, even the high schoolers all the way down to the little ones. For the writer of any age, the basic skill of sentence writing provides an important transition between single words. So a lot of our kids are able to write single words, but they can't write compositions yet. So a sentence provides that transition. If you can't write a good sentence, you can't write a good paragraph. And if you can't write a good paragraph, you can't write a good paper. And I really take this to heart, because I don't want to give a child the task of writing a paragraph if their sentences really aren't that good. Like I would rather get one good sentence out of a child than a 5-sentence paragraph where all of the sentences maybe say the same thing, or the sentences aren't really that good, or they're incomplete sentences. That there's no value in that. So I really go all the way back to the sentence level. So then we can build good paragraphs after we've mastered the sentence. And then when you master a paragraph, you can move on to papers. And I would just give yourself permission, even if you have an older student, to not worry that they're not producing long enough compositions, because if their sentences need work, just start at that point, and eventually you'll get to the point of longer writing. Okay, so we're going to look at some sentence activities to try. You might want to jot some of these down. You'll also get the replay. I'll email it out and it'll go on YouTube. So you might want to review this, but these are really easy ways to start practicing sentence composition with your child, and things you can actually try this week with very little preparation or materials. Let me go through the list. So we're going to look at fragments, sentence types, sentence expansion, because, but, so, which are conjunctions, and then sentence combining. And these are things I do with all of my Orton Gillingham students. Okay, so fragments, a lot of kids write in sentence fragments. They don't really realize when their sentence is complete and when it isn't. So we want to help them differentiate when they've written a complete sentence and when they've written an incomplete sentence. So one of the things you can do is an oral exercise to help demonstrate this, because sometimes we tell kids things like, this is a fragment and this is a complete sentence, and it just kind of goes over their head. So this is a good way to demo that. So you would say something to your child like, at the beach. And then they'll look at you like, at the beach, what? And then you'll say that exactly. What about at the beach? And then we say, we're going to complete that sentence. And we can just do this out loud. So at the beach, and then your child is supposed to fill in the missing information. We were at the beach. Oh, okay, now we have a complete sentence because we have the who, we, and we have the what, we were at the beach. You could do the same thing with the dog. And the child will say, well, the dog, okay, you tell me, how can we finish that sentence? The dog is brown, or the dog was on the sofa. So then they're getting the experience of taking a fragment and making it a complete sentence. And you can do this without anything even written down. So that's one fragment activity. Another activity you can do is to help your child understand that there are different sentence types. A lot of kids only write in statements. Everything is a statement. I am Jack. I am 7. I live in Michigan. And it's just a lot of information, but they don't ever vary their sentences. And so we want them to know that they can write statement sentences. That's just where we give information, that they can write questions, commands, which are like bossy sentences. That's how I describe it to my students, and also exclamations. So one way to do that is to practice writing a statement using the word ball. So this would be the task. And like we talked about earlier, if this is not something your child can do on paper, you can do it for them and with them. You can do it where you do the writing for them, or you're just doing it out loud. But the point is just to get them participating in the process as much as they can while you build their skills. Okay, so if you tell your student to write a statement using the word ball, they just have to use the word ball in a sentence. The ball is red. That's perfect. That's all you need them to do. And you would praise them if they're able to write an information sentence with the target word. And you would, I'm kind of using words that have to do with going to the beach, but you could pick words that have to do with maybe something you're learning. Like if let's say you're learning about Mount Rushmore or Washington, D.C., you could put in different words that have to do with something that you're learning in another area. So like write a statement using the word capital, and then they would write a sentence with a word that actually has more meaning because it's connected to something else. And then you would have them write or say a question sentence now, but using the word beach. So it could be something like, do you go to the beach? And then you say, that's great, that's awesome. And then talk about at the end, there would be a question mark at the end of the sentence. And then another example would be to write a command, and it's a bossy sentence, using the word tide. So it could be something like, get out of the high tide. That's a bossy sentence. It shows some expression, so they'd probably use an exclamation mark at the end. And then an exclamation, which is kind of sometimes similar to a command because they both can use exclamation marks. But an exclamation is where you're showing, some energy about something. And then the target word here is shark. And you would say something like, there's a shark in the water. Oh, what do we put at the end of a sentence like that? We use an exclamation point. And now they have varied the types of sentences that they're able to create in kind of an easy way, and hopefully about a topic that is of interest to them or something that you're learning elsewhere. Okay, another activity is sentence expansion. So this is where you're growing a sentence. So you help your child to add details to a simple sentence. And you can use question words like who, what, where, when, and why to help them develop their sentences. So let's say your child, and this could be maybe not an activity that you do just isolated, but maybe you're doing something in writing. And let's say your child writes a simple sentence like, I went to the beach. That is a perfect opportunity to expand and make the sentence more interesting. So when I'm teaching this to a child, usually I will give them a sentence, and I'll write the sentence, I went to the beach. It's my own sentence. And then I say, that sentence is kind of boring. So I'm criticizing or commenting on my own boring sentence. I wouldn't want to do that to their sentence because they might feel discouraged, but I can say, my sentence is not that interesting. It's kind of putting me to sleep. I went to the beach. Then I could say, but let's make it a little bit more interesting. So when did I go to the beach? And then they may say, yesterday I went to the beach, or I went to the beach on Sunday. So now just adding that little extra detail of when makes the sentence more interesting to read and to listen to. And then you would go through and ask, well, where did you go to the beach? Do you know the name of the beach that you went to? Do you remember what town you were in? So yesterday I went to Newport Beach. Okay, this is getting better than our original sentence. And then you could ask, well, who was with you when you went to the beach? Yesterday I went to Newport Beach with my friend. Okay, and then why? Was there a reason you guys went to the beach, or was it just because you wanted to go swimming? Oh, no, it was for her birthday. Okay, so now our finished sentence is, yesterday I went to Newport Beach with my friend for her birthday. And then I always show the student the sentence that we started with, and I'm like, okay, look at this. I went to the beach. Our idea is basically the same as when we started, except now our finished, improved sentence, just by adding all of these little details, is so much more interesting. And I always tell them, you know, people are going to want to read your writing when you add these extra details and bring it to life. So that's a really good activity you can do with pretty much any sentence they write that's on the more bland side, where they haven't added much detail. Another idea is because, but, so. So these are conjunctions, and this idea is from the Writing Revolution book, which we'll talk about a little bit more at the end. So this is a good way to introduce conjunctions, because we want our kids to be able to use conjunctions in writing, and it promotes deep thinking. So one example is to start with a sentence stem, like, we went to the beach, but with each sentence, we use a different conjunction. So we went to the beach because, we went to the beach, but, we went to the beach, so. And each sentence is going to have to end differently because the conjunction means something different. And again, if you're learning about like Washington, D.C., you could write something like about the Washington Monument was closed because there was an earthquake. I don't remember how many years ago, so it was closed for a while. Now you can go back in it. That might be something you would learn about if you went to Washington, D.C. The Washington Monument was closed because the Washington Monument was closed, but the Washington Monument was closed. So I would just transfer this to whatever your child is studying. And so let's look at what the outcome could be. We went to the beach because it was hot. We went to the beach, but it was crowded. We went to the beach so we could celebrate my friend. So each of these sentences starts the same way, but ends completely differently. And it really gets your child to think more deeply, instead of just saying something like, we went to the beach, which is kind of boring, like we talked about with the sentence expansion. So this is kind of another version of sentence expansion, just done with conjunctions. Another really well-researched task that you can give your child for writing a sentence combining. So this teaches grammar, and grammar is best learned within writing. So instead of, I know a lot of people buy grammar books, and we do, you know, kids will do like grammar worksheet pages, which is fine, but bringing that grammar into writing will make it more meaningful, and they'll learn it better. Sentence combining reduces short, choppy sentences, which our kids typically create. You know, they, like that one student of mine, he's like, I am not writing more than 3 words. So a 3-word sentence is going to be very choppy, and we want to eliminate that, especially as they get older. And this is one of the most effective strategies for grades 4 and up. So let's take a look. So you would give your child 2 short sentences, like, the beach was sunny, the beach was windy. So you're doing the idea generation and you're writing it down for them. And then their job is to combine those. And you can even give them the word that's going to combine the sentences. You can say, okay, we're going to use the word and, but we're going to put these sentences together. So now, instead of the beach was sunny, the beach was windy, which is choppy, the beach was sunny and windy. And the more you practice this, like, you're demonstrating it, you're doing it for them, in front of them, with them, you know, you want to model how to do it. They'll start to do it in their writing once they learn that that's even an option for them. You know, they may not even realize that there are ways to combine sentences, but if you teach it, they'll start to incorporate it. Because actually, it's easier to write the beach was sunny and windy than writing two shorter sentences. And they may even look at it like that, like, oh, this is actually a more efficient way to get two ideas and put them into one sentence. Now, if your child is doing really well with sentences, if your child is able to write sentences, or you feel like, okay, we're going to be able to get the sentence thing down pretty easily, then there are activities you can use that are beyond sentences. So the hamburger paragraph, that's one thing we're going to look at. I love this because it's a visual and it makes a lot of sense. Pre-write talking, and then idea generation lists. So let's take a look at what to do once you've kind of gotten the handle on writing sentences with your child. I'll give you a link to this at the end. I found it on the Reading Rockets website. And a hamburger paragraph, if you've never seen it before, is a visual that kids will remember, where they have the top bun is the topic sentence, the concluding sentence is the bottom bun, and then all of the supporting sentences or the detail sentences go in the middle. So that's where the tomatoes and cheese and burger and lettuce and everything goes in the center, where our details are. You can also transfer this to a 5-paragraph essay. So you could have like your first paragraph, your second paragraph, third paragraph, fourth and fifth. That's a different way to look at it. But I would print something like this out because kids like to look at it. And then you can have them plug their topic sentence into the top box, and then each detail. So this is part of the organization part. So they don't have to guess what details they're going to put second, third, and fourth. They can, in each sentence, they know ahead, they've already planned and they've jotted it down, and you could have them do it in the form of notes. So they don't necessarily have to write the whole sentence on here and then transfer everything to another piece of paper, because they might feel like you're making them do it twice, which you would be. You could do this in the form of notes and then write it as a paragraph on a piece of paper. But this gives them a visual of where they are going so that they don't get lost in the process. Pre-writing. So anytime you're going to have your child do some writing, you want to talk about the topic a lot before you start to write. So even if you think your child is really familiar with a scenario, like let's say you want them to write about their birthday party, you might think, well, why do we need to talk about it? Like the birthday party just happened and the child was there and I was there and they experienced everything about it because it's their party. It's really hard sometimes for kids to get those experiences or knowledge into words, especially getting those ideas into words on paper before they've been able to say it out loud. So I was writing with a student about a camping trip, and I had him, we sat for several minutes and I had him tell me all sorts of things about the camping trip, like how they set up the tent and where they were and how long the drive was and what they had for food and what did they do for fun. So he talked and talked and talked. So then when we got to the idea generation part of the task, the ideas were fresh in his mind, and he had already had the opportunity to kind of bring it all out of his memory so that he was ready to write. So you don't really want to give your child just a piece of paper and say, okay, write about your birthday party. They may not even get started. They may not even know where to start. But if you talk to them about it, that's going to help a lot. Another way to address, if you want them to write about write a paragraph maybe about a trip, or like the camping trip example I just gave, is to write an idea list. And I got this from Diana Hanbury King's book, and I love it because it's so simple. She says to just have kids write down 10 things about a topic. So you could be, if you're learning about dinosaurs, have them write the 10 things down that they've learned about dinosaurs or that they like about dinosaurs. And I wouldn't be super critical about the list. If the ideas don't have anything to do with the topic, I would redirect your child. But if they write something that's a little bit of an interesting fact, I would just keep going, like include that in the list of 10. And then you have your child pick 3. So they choose the 3 that they want to include in their paragraph. So they eliminate several of the ideas, but then they choose their 3 favorites. And I have an example here. So this is the child who went camping in Yosemite over the summer. And so we made a list, and he put long drive. He he put lots of O's because it was like a 4 or 5 hour drive, I think, up to Yosemite. He Sandy Beach. He had they had to repack and move. They actually set up their campsite and then were told they were in the wrong place, and so they had to take everything down and move it to a new location. They jumped in the river. He got a stuffed raccoon. They played board games. They made friends, crayfish, stars, waterfall, and then they did s'mores at night. So we had already talked for several minutes about the camping trip, and then I had him list the 10 ideas. Now, if your child's struggling with the handwriting or spelling, I would do the list for your child. So have them tell you, long drive. Oh, okay. And you write that down for them. And then he went through and picked the 3 that he wanted to do. And actually, I think we did 4. Yeah, we did 4 for this paragraph. And so now he has his 4 detailed sentences that he wanted to put in the paragraph. And then we moved on to the actual writing. And I think it's a really great way to help them generate maybe more ideas than they need and then narrow it down to the best ones. Because if you just say, okay, we're going to write about camping, they may think of a few things to write about and then later think, oh gosh, why did I write about that? One of the most important parts of the trip was doing s'mores, and they may wish that they had added a detail that they didn't think of if you just have them go off of whatever comes to mind at first. And when you're doing writing assignments or any kind of writing activity, only hold your kids accountable for what you've taught them and be gentle with correction. So if you've worked on periods and question marks and exclamation points and capital letters, definitely hold them accountable for that. So if you see a sentence that doesn't have any kind of end mark, you can say, oh, ooh, looks like we're missing something at the end of that sentence. What are we missing? And then have them fix that, because that's something you've taught them or worked on with them. But if they misspell words, I'm trying to see if there's anything misspelled. Oh, I don't think there actually was much misspelled in this list, but if he had misspelled a word in this list and it wasn't something I've talked to him about, like not something we have worked on, I would just ignore it, because we don't need to make everything a teaching moment. Everything doesn't have to be a teachable opportunity. Just hold them accountable for what you have taught them. And so if there is a spelling pattern you've worked on, like let's say the suffix ing, and they misspell it, like let's say they spell it as just ng, I would say, oh, it looks like, I think you were trying to write suffix ing, but I don't see the I, let's fix that. But if they misspell the word Yosemite or something that you haven't worked on, I would just ignore it, because a child doesn't want to feel like every part of their writing has been picked apart. That'll be discouraging. And with these kids who struggle with writing, there are probably more errors than we want and what they want, and we can't address all of them. And then just be gentle with correction. So make it like we're working on this together, and not like they've somehow failed or disappointed you in the process. Okay, so let's talk about scaffolds. So scaffolds are supports that are needed and encouraged until independence is developed. So a scaffold is a support. So it gives us the opportunity to work on something. The scaffold on this building has been, it looks like maybe the Supreme Court or one of the buildings in Washington, D.C. It's a structure next to another structure to offer support. And that's what we're doing when we give our kids the ability to use supports as they work on their writing skills or their handwriting skills and all the other skills that are part of writing. So these are some supports you can offer your child. Voice to text, so that's where they can just speak their writing. That's a really useful tool for kids who are dyslexic. They don't have to worry about the spelling and the typing or the handwriting. They can say their ideas, and then those ideas end up on paper. And we do want to teach them how to be able to write on paper, but while they're working on that, there's no reason we can't do voice to text. For myself, I use voice to text with Google Docs, because sometimes I just don't want to type. And so there are lots of programs out there, and the Google voice to text is free. So that's what I use. You can be your child's scribe. So that student I mentioned earlier who was like, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to get me to write and I'm not going to write. I was like, okay. So I quickly decided I was going to be his scribe for the day. So I did not make him write anything. And I actually said that to him. I said, oh, you're not going to be doing any of the writing. You're going to do the ideas, but you are not going to, you're not going to be, you're not going to have a pencil in your hand today. So you don't even have to worry about that. So I became his scribe. Typing is another scaffold. That's a support. If you teach your child how to type, then they can choose between handwritten work or typed work. There are requirements for both now in life. Like there are things that I have to actually handwrite, but there are things that I have to type. Like sometimes we're sent documents where we have to type into them. And so it's good for kids to be able to do both. Shared writing. So that's where you look at the process is something you're doing together. So maybe you're both like the camping trip ideas we were looking at. Maybe you're the parent who went on the camping trip with the child. Like it was a family trip. So you could come up with ideas where you're like, oh, remember when we did X, Y, and Z? So you could add ideas to the list. And now it's a shared writing project. And then you can do things that are just oral only. So things where you don't do anything that has to do with paper, depending on your child's difficulty or maybe their emotional reaction to writing on paper. You can just do things out loud. And usually kids are not resistant to that. Like those activities that we talked about at the beginning with completing sentence fragments, they won't usually fight you on that because it's pretty easy and they just talk. They're just talking with you. So writing programs, so pre-made programs can lighten the load and help organize instruction. So if you don't want to create writing activities or you don't have time or, there's, you would just rather have it done for you. Actually, let me skip ahead. One of them that I suggest is Essentials in Writing. And it's, I think about $100. They have digital and print versions, but you can get different levels and they're pretty good about helping you pick what level is appropriate for your child. But what I like about Essentials in Writing, what I can see from, I went to one of their workshops recently, is that they also focus on starting at the sentence level. So they kind of take that same approach of like, well, we can't do this great long research paper writing if kids aren't able to write good sentences. So that's a pre-made program that you can take a look at. A couple of these aren't really programs, but these are resources. I use both of these. So the Writing Revolution I think is great, and it teaches you how to start at the sentence level. Like a lot of what I talked about has come from the Writing Revolution book. But it gives you examples, but it doesn't give you lessons. But if you like the idea of figuring out how to incorporate writing into what you're already doing, like if you're doing a unit on the 50 states and you really like the idea of writing about that, then the Writing Revolution will teach you how to do that. And I think, and that is actually one of the most effective ways to write, is to write about what you're learning as opposed to writing in isolation and then going back to what you're learning in the other content areas. And then Diana Hanbury King, she has several writing books. She has some that have actual activity pages. So those are good. But I enjoyed this one because she just talks about the basics of writing. And these would be more resources for you. And then you come up with what to do with your child. If you're looking for something that's pre-made, then Essentials in Writing is one of those options. Other ideas are OutSchool classes. I would just look very closely at who's teaching the class, what's going to be covered. But there are some OutSchool classes you can sign up for, and they're usually pretty affordable because they're group classes. You can also have a writing tutor, or if you have an Orton Gillingham tutor or another type of reading tutor like myself, I do writing with my students who are Orton Gillingham tutoring students. So you may find someone who's going to address writing but within the context of also addressing the dyslexia or the dysgraphia and the other things that are going on with their literacy skills. And then Brave Writer is also a really good option, except it's just a little pricey. So they have some really great classes that are taught by teachers. The kids, usually the classes are like 6 to 8 weeks long, as far as I can remember. And the teachers give feedback. So your child would submit an assignment, and then the teacher of the class would say, hey, you know, I think this part's great. Maybe we could do this for this section. And so they get feedback from someone other than you as the parent, because sometimes it's hard for kids to, you know, sometimes they hear things better from other people, which is why people hire me to tutor their kids, because it just helps to have a third person sometimes involved. But the Brave Writer classes are probably the more expensive option, but definitely something to look at. Their classes also fill up quickly. So if that is something you're interested in, you'd want to look at it in advance, because they fill up weeks and months, sometimes ahead of time. Okay, some things to keep in mind. Writing is hard, even for adults. I had a writing project I did maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it took me the whole summer. And it was so challenging to do this long project. It was like 200 pages of this project I had to complete. And I never appreciated writing as much as I did then, and writers. And so just keep in mind, it's just difficult. And when a child is dyslexic or dysgraphic or both, it's even more challenging. Start with the basics. So don't be afraid to just go back to those basic sentence level activities, even if you have an older child. Don't be afraid to use scaffolds and accommodations. You know, if your child just isn't ready to write down their own ideas, write for them and make it easier for them to actually get into the writing activity without the burden of things that are too hard for them at this point. And then hopefully you will enjoy the process. I love when my students write something, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, like we went from nothing to a really great paragraph. And I'll share it with my students' parents, you know, I'll send it to them, like, look at what he wrote about, you know, your camping trip. Like, these are the things that stood out to him. And it's amazing what you can get out of kids. It's just taking the care to make it something that they can join in on with you, as opposed to feeling like they're being expected to do something they just can't do. Okay, we are going to do Q&A, and I think we'll stop and do that. We do have one more workshop is on the schedule, and we're going to talk about handwriting, because handwriting and writing are two totally different things. So writing today, we are talking about like putting ideas on paper, but handwriting is a huge part of literacy skills and literacy development. And so that's coming up on in 3 weeks on the 22nd. And then I'm not sure what we're going to do after that. So I'm looking for ideas. So if you have any ideas, you're welcome to share them. And then let's see, also, I think most people I'm finding are inviting to this through Facebook, but I'm also on Instagram and a little bit on TikTok. And then my videos are being posted on YouTube as well. But let's do some Q&A.